Greetings, everyone, and welcome to America in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Chief Content Officer of Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. We are recording this on Friday, November 15th. President-elect Donald Trump has been busy this week filling out his cabinet. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida for Secretary of State, Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida as Attorney General, former Hawaii U.S. Rep. Tulsi Gabbard, as Director of National Intelligence, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem as Secretary of Homeland Security, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as Health and Human Services Secretary. I could go on, but first let's bring in Casey Harper, Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Center Square. Casey, all of Trump's cabinet picks need to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate, which will be controlled by Republicans with a 53-47 majority. Let's start with what you think some of the highlights or lowlights of these selections are, or any that I didn't mention.
Dan, the Avengers are assembling. That seems what it feels like here with this very unusual, very talented, very famous team. Now, of course, to Democrats, this is more like Thanos is Trump, and he is ready to destroy the world. I guess depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you'll look at it differently. But Trump is doing kind of what everyone thought he would do last time and what a lot of Trump supporters wanted him to do last time. Last time, they wanted Trump to come into office and shake things up, bring in a lot of new ideas, a lot of new faces, change the status quo, take the positions of power from, the swamp, as he often referred to it, and give the power to the people, to different voices. And last time he mostly kind of went with establishment picks, and Trump himself admitted that the people he put in charge maybe were his undoing. And so this time around, he is doing the complete opposite. He's putting in a lot of controversial picks. I think, so let's say highs and lows. I mean, one high in all this, Dan, is I really love to see the bipartisan nature of this. I think it's good for the country to have a couple of Democrats in here. Historically, that is how it's been. In recent history, it's not that way. But I think it's really good for Trump. I think it's really good for the America First movement to have some Democrats, some independents brought into leadership to create this coalition, to make it, create this vision that America is unified. I think, people say Trump can be divisive, and maybe he is, but he has Democrats in his cabinet. So I think that's a high for him. That's a win for him. That's a win for the Republican Party. It's a win for the country to have bipartisan leadership in the administration. Let's say, I don't want to say anything's a low necessarily, because that's sort of my opinion, but I think this Matt Gaetz for DOJ is going to be a home run or a strikeout. Yeah, I mean, Gaetz has a pretty questionable history. He's had an ethics investigation. Now, some think he was targeted wrongly for kind of political persecution. Others think he's guilty of sin and it's about to be exposed. And I think time will tell, Dan. The answer on that one is we'll see. We'll see if Matt Gaetz is able to just clean up the Justice Department and prosecute some Democrats and establishment insiders that Trump supporters have wanted prosecuted for a long time. Or maybe he'll be totally exposed and some leaks will come out and he'll have to resign and it'll be a disaster. We'll see.
Yeah, Gaetz, the House Ethics Committee investigating him for alleged sexual misconduct, they were set to release, and I referred to him as Representative Matt Gaetz at the top. He resigned his seat shortly after Trump nominated him as Attorney General, so he's no longer a representative there. Some have said it's because the House Ethics Committee was about to release a report on him now that he's not a representative on that ethics investigation. Now that he's not a representative, there are calls for them to still release that report. We'll see if that happens. You mentioned Democrats. Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, turned independent. Robert F. Kennedy wanted to run for president as a Democrat. The Democratic Party blocked him out of that process, so he decided to run as an independent. Those are two of the Democrats you mentioned who have been appointed by Trump. Two names I didn't mention, Casey, and it has to do with a new department, the Department of Government Efficiency. Trump named Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk to head that agency. That, I think, is an interesting thing and maybe something that has been needed for years or decades. What do you think of that?
this is one of those picks. I mean, this, if anything, is for the base. This is for the base. They love Ramaswamy. They love Musk, of course. I mean, and they love the idea of government efficiency. I mean, for whatever reason, everybody generally acknowledges that the government is highly inefficient, has corruption in it. The taxpayer, or that the wasting of taxpayers' dollars is rampant. But I think people have, we've talked about this, Dan. I think people have given up on the idea that it could actually be cleaned up, because for so many years, Republicans ran on cleaning it up, and they really had mixed results. They really didn't. They did some, but it wasn't permanent. And now the debt is out of control, around $35 trillion. And Republicans have mostly stopped talking about it. And the Democrats never, back in the 90s, they did. Bill Clinton, talked about government efficiency. But since then, it hasn't really been a big part of their platform. And now Republicans don't run on, efficient spending or government efficiency or cutting the deficit hardly anymore. So I think Americans had given up on it. And so to see this out of nowhere, which is kind of interesting, because Trump himself did run up the deficits and debt, when he was in office. But I think this is another bipartisan win, Dan, because I think a lot of independents and Democrats also agree that the government is inefficient. Polling shows that. And so there's kind of two ways, Dan, and I want to hear what you think about this, but I think there's really two ways that they can cut government efficiency, just big picture. And one is going to be a lot more successful than the other. And we have a list we just put up a list at thecentersquare.com of some examples of kinds of government waste. But there's the little examples that are really entertaining and just absolutely ridiculous. They get a lot of headlines, like, giving money to study hamsters fighting on steroids. And no, I did not make that up. Or giving. I have one on the website. It's something like $426,000 to encourage Latino men to exercise, or $200,000 spent by the Department of Defense on Starbucks espresso machines. So these get the headlines, but these are kind of small amounts of money. They are signs of rampant waste and abuse, but they're small amounts of money. And I think they're going to target those, and that'll be good press coverage for them. But then, Dan, the second part is there are entire departments of the government that could just be lopped off. I mean, it could be totally cleaned out. And Ramaswamy in interviews has talked about just cleaning out entire departments. RFK has talked about cleaning out entire departments at the FDA. Elon Musk famously fired about 80% of his staff when he bought Twitter. And, last I checked, the site is still running just fine. So the question is it going to be these kind of fun spot check reduction in grant programs that are high profile, or are they going to be able to successfully, clean up billions of dollars of spending by ending entire, wings of the government?
It will be interesting to follow how all of these nominees shake out. Casey, thank you for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with all of the developments when it comes to Trump's cabinet at thecentersquare.com.